We have to work toward a time when people can go about their daily lives mindful of risks, but unburdened by fear. And what this means is that we cannot shut down our society, board up our borders, or become insular. And the reason is clear, because our goal is not just to preserve and protect our lives, but our entire way of life. The very heart of what makes America special and what brought us and our ancestors here in the first place. Now, neither I nor the Department of Homeland Security can do this by ourselves. In order to protect our country and our way of life, we need to partner with every community in the country. We need their support, we need their cooperation, and we need their advice and good counsel. That's what a full partnership is all about. If we are to protect our lives, ensure our prosperity, and secure our freedom, there must be an active, positive relationship between the United States government and the communities that make up the fabric of this nation. And so in the pursuit of our objective of protecting our life, our lives, and our way of life, we work with every community in the country. We work with Catholics and Protestants, with the Jewish community, with the Sikh community, and with the American, Arab, Muslim, and South Asian communities, all of which share in common the stake in the American venture. Part of what we try to do is listen. And so we have community roundtables in cities all over the country, and of course Houston is one of them. At our roundtable meeting a year ago, an FBI colleague shared his concerns about the possible radicalization of young people. And so community leaders quickly responded by developing a curriculum for young people at several area mosques. Even though the community itself was not part of the problem, these leaders took the initiative to become part of the solution. Earlier today, I attended an event which we held with young people at Rice University. I had the opportunity to meet with about 30 young, college-age, some may be still in high school, members of the South Asian community. We've been discussing topics like the civil rights challenges our nation faces. We've talked about how we could encourage members of the South Asian community to consider public service careers, including careers with the Department of Homeland Security. And they've relayed their concerns about perceived and actual barriers to making that choice. I learned a lot from talking to them this afternoon, and I hope to learn more and to continue to encourage young people from these communities to become part of not only the Department of Homeland Security, but all elements of the federal government. Another concrete example of how engagement has helped us deals with travel during the Hajj. Of course, thousands of Americans travel to Saudi Arabia every year for their spiritual pilgrimage. At one of our Houston roundtables, community leaders asked whether our TSA screeners and Customs and Border Protection officers were prepared for the influx of returning travelers. We went back to Washington and worked with the TSA and Customs and Border Protection to produce educational materials for our screeners and officers. We didn't drop our security measures, but we made sure that our screeners and officers were culturally competent. One final example of how engagement is producing real results involves Councilor M.J. Khan. In May of last year, Councilmember Khan came to my offices along with 3 other influential American Muslim leaders. One of the topics we discussed was how government officials should talk about terrorism in a way that does not cause the listener to conflate it or confuse it with Islam. As a result of that discussion, and similar ones with influential American Muslim thinkers, scholars, and leaders, our Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties produced a paper to educate us on the context and background of various terms. The content of this terminology paper is already having an influence in our government, including the State Department, which has sent it to posts across the globe. Now, I want to acknowledge that this paper generated a certain amount of controversy. This was not, however, I want to be clear, an exercise in what some people call political correctness. This was rather educating ourselves about very important distinctions in language between the Islamic religion and the Islamic faith on the one hand, and those ideologues who have used some of the terminology of Islam which they hijack for their own political purposes. The reason to be aware of the meaning of these terms is not because we are afraid to confront the truth of the threats we face, but because we want to be accurate in separating our friends from our enemies and in making sure we do not unwittingly contribute through the use of language to part of the problem that we have as we face the entire world. Now, all of these examples I've talked about come from our engagement efforts here in Houston, but we're engaging elsewhere all over the country. And our efforts in each of these cities have yielded their share of success stories as well. We need to keep forging these bonds of partnership with our communities. Now, that leads me to this question. What can you who are in this room do to help us in furthering this partnership for the sake of our security, for the sake of our prosperity, and for the sake of our freedom? Well, the first thing I'd ask you to do is to encourage your children, if not yourselves, to consider public service as a career. Speaking for myself, I can tell you that despite its challenges and sacrifices, public service is enormously fulfilling. And I can't imagine what my life would have been like had I not made the decision to serve my country in a number of different ways. And let me add that when it comes to public service, there is a need to be filled as well, a need that people in your communities are in a position to help us fill. Simply stated, we need more young people from all communities, from all walks of life, including the South Asian community, to join us in government. And that means across the whole spectrum of government, in politics, in law enforcement, and in hundreds of additional areas. This is not only because we need language skills and cultural competencies from this community, but because we need to demonstrate and make it clear to every American citizen that we are equal owners of this society and that there is no avenue, particularly no avenue in government, that is closed to American citizens, whatever their heritage, whatever their background, and whatever their faith. Now, beyond simply serving in public service in an official government capacity, there's another thing that this community or these communities can do to help us build stronger bridges to other South Asian communities, whether they are in Europe, for example, like in the United Kingdom, or in the South Asian countries themselves. We've agreed with the British government to start a project to connect successful South Asian Americans with their counterparts in the UK, and we can take it further and do this in South Asia as well. Why do I think it's important? Well, using these bridges, we can start to build and intensify nonprofit organizations that are expanding the help they give to people who need that help all over the world. We can begin to develop and improve and intensify our student exchanges, in which we bring people from around the world, including South Asia, as students to experience what life in this country is like. We can fund medical clinics in some of the most impoverished parts of South Asia. By strengthening our networks of peace and friendship, we are directly fighting against the networks of hatred and terror which are responsible for all of the bombs that we see going off, whether they be here in New York or Washington, over in London, over in Pakistan, or over in Bali. It's the networks of peace and friendship that are the best weapon against the networks of hate and terror. A third thing that it's important to have your communities do is to help us refute the ugly myth, the myth really propagated by bin Laden and his deputy Zawahiri, that the United States and our society are somehow at war with Muslims, and at war with Muslims in America. Now, we know that this is not true. We know this is a lie. But we also know that when al-Qaeda reaches people in other parts of the world who have not experienced this country, who have not met with members of the South Asian community who are Americans, they have no way of judging whether bin Laden is telling the truth or not. And so they can become influenced by this message of hate, this false message of hate, which is part of bin Laden's ideology, to set up a false clash of civilizations. And let me be clear, this is not a clash of civilizations. This is a clash of the civilized and the uncivilized.